Thank you. So nice that you've come here this evening, and we are also streaming this talk, so it's also possible to see it online. Yes, I'm Sandra Grehn. I'm a theatre critic at Gothenburg in Sweden, and I'm also holding a PhD in theatre studies and comparative literature here in Sweden. And I'm the moderator of this wonderful panel session. The topic we are talking about is developing the criticism in Europe. What conditions and possibilities are there? So we are going to talk about what the conditions look like today for theatre criticism around Europe and what kind of differences there are depending on the countries and contexts where you live. To be able to do this, we have this wonderful international panel which we're going to introduce now. So we have Andrea Anna yes, from Greece, and you are a dramaturge and a theatre critic. Yes. And you're a member of the National Union of Theatre and Performing Arts critics in Thessaloniki.
Yes, in Greece.
Yes, welcome. And we have George Lizos from Cyprus, who is a musical theatre actor, and you've studied the geographies of theatre and the relationship between actors, affect, and the physical space of the stage. And you're also a writer of books on creative and personal development. Welcome.
Thank you.
And to my left, I have Surish and Amburi from Portugal. And you are a playwright, an actor, and the president of JAW, International Theatre in Lisbon. Yes, welcome. And we have on the side, we have Ylva Lagercrantz-Spindler, and you're from Sweden.
I hope so, yes.
And you're a cultural journalist, you're an author, and theatre critic since many years.
I'm chairman in the Swedish Theatre Association.
Yes, the chairman of the Swedish Association of Theatre Critics as well. Yes, and the idea is that we have a talk until about 7 o'clock, and then we will give the word out to all of you if you have questions or comments. And so hopefully we will have a generous talk together, and then also have a including talk with the audience. So let's start with the first question. And so I ask you, Andrea, first, what do the conditions look like for theatre criticism in your country?
Hello, everybody. Well, firstly, in Greece, criticism is not a recognized profession. So, since you like going to the theater, and especially when you're educated in the theater, you can write, and it's up to the medium. If you can make a, let's say, living, not makes living this, on your texts. I suppose that this, throws a line of what is criticism for Greece. We have this National Association of Critics, of Theatre and Performing Arts critics. Most of the members, are old people, and I don't mean old people by age. I mean that most of the voices that you can read are not very open-minded to the new. So when it comes to a young person, right, you're not very well accepted. And to begin with, I think that basically this is it, to begin with.
Thank you. And George, from Cyprus, what are the conditions like there?
Well, the conditions in Cyprus when it comes to theater criticism are basically non-existent in the sense that we don't really have theater critics. There was one a few years ago who sadly passed away. And as a result, the theater criticism is very decentralized. It's a very small community, very small theater community specifically. And when there are attempts to write critiques, for example, they tend not to be very objective in the sense that because it's such a small theater community, everybody knows everybody, they're all friends. So there's a little bit of a corruption when it comes to like writing critiques. So you can't really trust them 100%. There aren't any newspapers dedicated for theater criticism. There are only like a few columns in certain newspapers that people write about, but most of theater criticism reviews and critiques are in blogs, they are in personal websites, and sometimes Instagram as well. So there isn't much there, but I'm hopeful that there will be development because there's definitely interest. And there's definitely many theatrologists, many dramaturgs who want to do this, but they just don't have the opportunity. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to learn more about this, so I can like transfer the information back to like the right people inside, so we can make something happen.
Thank you. And Suresh, what is it like in Portugal?
Yeah, so when you actually asked me, told me you were going to ask me this question, I actually ended up making inquiries because I didn't know there was a critical system involved, critic system in Portugal. I found out I was right. There was no system of criticism in Portugal. There are critics, mostly cultural commentators who work online, but it's not an autonomous profession by itself. It's not a specialized skill set. There are artists who have become emeritus, if you wish, and have become now cultural commentators and critics. And so they have opinions which may or may not be relevant to current forms of theater, but also because of Portugal's very specific history, that it was under a fascist regime for a lot of the 20th century. The theater that is arisen in Portugal is supposed to have the nature of a messianic flavor. It's supposed to be something that is supposed to be good. Artists are supposed to be wonderful and cherished. And so theater criticism is generally looked upon as a hangman's job. Unpleasant people do unpleasant jobs with it, effectively. But at the moment, there are 5 or 6 critics, for example, operating in the capital. And I think the criticism that they do is not of the craft, but of the nature of the messaging. Because Portugal has a rich history of very, well, ugly history, technically, of colonization, which we're still coming to grips with. And so a lot of the plays that come out are about re-examining that part of our history. And so I think the criticism is directed towards the content, not the craft, technically. I'm hoping that kind of changes eventually in the future.
Thank you. And Ylva, what about Sweden?
Everything was so interesting, so I forgot what to say. That actually in Sweden, theater critic is kind of a profession. In the Swedish Theater Critics Association, we have like 40 members, but maybe not for very long, because the numbers of reviews in the papers are downsizing for every month. And I mean, it's still alive and kicking in my paper. We have like about 4 or 6 reviews each week, including dance and theater and circus or whatever. But still there is quite an amount, but there is no theater critic employed any longer. The last one was Lars Winger, very famous Swedish theater critic, but he was the last employed at my paper, and I don't know really, but I don't think there is anyone else that is full-time employed as a theater critic. So, and in our association, I can't. The rebirth of new critics is very bad. So I mean, if there is like a panel discussion like this about theater criticism, and they say this is a young panel, the youngest one is like 45, maybe. So the rebirth is a very important question, I believe, and we'll come back to that. because we have to find new platforms and be where the young people are. So, well, I would like to talk more about that later, maybe. Is that nice?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. So it seemed to be quite hard being writing criticism in different kind of countries. It's hard to live, actually make a living of it. Often you work with other things as well, maybe as a cultural journalist or as a dramaturge or doing other things. And there are less and less newspapers and journals as well that are actually including the criticism there. I just wanted to ask one more thing that it reminded me of, and that's the matter of censorship. Is that something that is relevant in the contexts where you are working or living? Is there anyone who wants to say something?
I think so.
Yes.
Thank you. So censorship. Yes. Criticism in Greece, I think that's like this everywhere. Faces censorship a lot. If you're an established critic, I mean, you know, a famous one, you probably started from some point when you had to write good things for several people. In my case, when I started some years ago, I had to see performance in National Theatre of Northern Greece, and Philemon by Martin McDonagh, and I was informed that I had to write a good thing for a specific actor. I saw the performance, I didn't like the actor. I said that I didn't like the acting. So they never accepted any other of my articles. And that's it. This year, in Greece, you may have heard of it. We have this Athenian and Epicurus festival every summer. So there is a famous critic, a lady, who just had seen a performance in National Theatre, King Lear, and she didn't like it, obviously. And okay, she kind of showed the situation about, you know, the internal politics of the theater organization. This had, as a result, that the critic was fired immediately, right? In the middle of the festival period, which also brings us to the point to when we can ask ourselves what will happen to this festival when this critic was one of the very few who had the chance to go and attend performances. And that's it. This is censorship. For me, this is censorship. Thank you.
Yeah, so it can be quite hard to be a critic sometimes. And also it's really a matter of democracy to be able to write about theatre and to be able to be honest and being a kind of part of developing theatre as well. Yes, did you have something?
Yes, can I add something about this, because I think it's so interesting. I feel that censorship, of course, exists, as you just demonstrated. However, I also think there's implicit censorship in the sense that because we're human beings and we're relational beings, we form relationships with actors, with companies, with production teams. And as a result, sometimes either consciously or unconsciously, we're more favorable towards certain actors, towards certain productions as a result of these connections. So of course, it's so important to be objective when being a critic, but I do understand the relational aspect of it. And I'm just not sure whether it's possible, at least 100% to like eliminate that. So it's a matter of like, I guess, accepting it, but at the same time, finding ways to create boundaries that respect the critics, but also respect their relationships with theatrical companies and productions.
And this can also be a big problem when there are few critics writing about a lot of different groups, and you often know people in the kind of performance of theater community, of course. Yes, that's really interesting. I would like to ask, how do you use theater criticism in your profession? And of course, Andrea, Anna, Eva, you're working as critics, so you're actually writing it, but perhaps you are using this kind of thinking or approaching things when you do other things as well. So who would like to start? Eva?
In one way, I use theater critic, as you said, theater criticism when I work with other kind of articles. If I am about to interview an actor, I of course read everything this actor have staged on and reviews about these performances as a research. So that's one way. And the other way is that I'm very curious when I write a review myself. Of course, I don't read the other ones before. It's not possible because you see the performance in the night and then you have to leave the article early in the morning. So it's not easy to read the other ones. But afterwards, I'm very curious and read the other ones just to compare and be very depressed because I missed some perspectives and why didn't I see that and that. So it's like for me a school as a theater critic to read the other ones afterwards. So that's one way to use it for me.
Yes, and of course, theater criticism also can be reviews, but it can also be other kind of texts, essays, or thinking about literary text. So just to add to the kind of broken sense.
At the papers and the reviews.
Yeah, yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Of course.
Yes, and
should I? Yes. Okay, of course, research, describe, dramaturgically speaking, when you have to write an essay, for example, on a performance, reading critics on criticism on this performance helps you know, the drama to better understand the frame of the performance, like how is the situation around it, the politics, the society, because performance is the here and now of society. So we really need to keep this in mind. And I think that the critics also need to, link it somehow to the here and now of their society. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
yes, and Suresh, what do you say? How do you use criticism in your profession?
Yeah, so a week ago when I first saw that question, my first response was, I don't. But then I thought about it, actually. And then I realized I do. So generally when so there are two parts of the answer. Personally, when I do a play, when I start constructing a play, if it's a play that has been done for a classic, Shakespeare or some such thing, one of the things I do is I go look up other productions of that plays that have been done in completely different genres. So if I'm doing Macbeth, I go and look up musical Macbeth or dancing Macbeths, not drama Macbeth, because I'm doing drama Macbeth, but I want to look at these things and then try to look at the critical reviews of these things. Because clearly the people who are doing these plays have done something interesting. They have extracted from the same play that I'm going to do something very interesting and different. They're trying to represent in a different way, so it won't influence what I'm doing. But I want to see whether the critic actually who worked with them, the critical response to that, has actually, whether that new thing has actually worked. Effectively. They clearly thought there was something original they could do with this. And so I try to figure out whether that has communicated itself through the critical review of these things. And occasionally I find that there's an aspect of a character in the play that has come out very well, for example, in a physical movement performance, in a dancing performance of Macbeth, which has been commented upon by a critique. I mean, somebody somewhere in New Zealand does it, and then there's a critique who comments upon it, and then I say, oh, that's interesting, and then I go back to the words, to the text, to see where in the text it is. And then so I actually do this, and I didn't realize I did this, actually. It was very funny, till you asked me. So I spent a month or so looking at all kinds of weird versions of that particular piece, just to start the process. So that's one way to do this. Now there's a second way in which I think generally I use criticism, mostly critics' point of view. So I have a list of critics in different newspapers. I classify them into good, bad, and ugly. Not because none of them have critiqued me. They're in different countries. But basically, most plays and most versions of plays that I like, there are critics who like the same things for the same reason. There are critics who are neutral about them. There are critics who are totally opposite to what I like about theater, very consistently. So one of the things that I do is when I start designing the practicalities of the play, like the lighting and the sound and this and that, which comes afterwards, when you're deep in the process. Occasionally I have a moment when I have to make a choice and I'm not sure. I ask myself, what would happen if I made this choice? Would the ugly critic like it? If the ugly critic likes it, then I know there's a problem. So I've been doing this mentally as an exercise. It really helps. It really helps. It's like a great little response board.
It sounds like really well researched critics.
Yes, I didn't know that. So you asked me. Exactly.
The ugly one.
The list, yes.
But you really use it.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
No, it was just behind the desk.
Yeah. Yes, you were saying that you don't want to be the ugly critic, or
No, I said it was a fantastic way to work with.
Yes.
I am very impressed.
yes,
It worked that way.
Yeah.
And it's not.
The ugly critics are much more useful than the good ones.
Hmm?
The ugly critics are much more useful than the good
Yeah,
ones.
yes,
They help you.
I believe it's true. Yes.
it's really a way of being inspired. And
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice. Okay, George.
So as an actor, I like to use critiques to, first of all, see the impact of the work and also see what kind of performances get different types of critiques. So it's interesting to see how people react to certain play, to certain performance, but also as an aspiring director, I'm really interested in seeing how the director has or has not managed to essentially place the play, the production within the culture, within politics, within society, and also identify subcultures, because I feel that is the future of theater, where we have like subcultures gaining more voice, which I think is so important. And let me give you an example. This summer in Cyprus, there was a production of The Phoenician Women by Euripides that I was part of as well, directed by Magdalena Zira. And she basically juxtaposed the anti-war play that is Euripides' Phoenician Women with the war situation in Cyprus. And then a critique from the US, classicist Edith Hall from the University of Durham, she came and saw the performance in Cyprus and wrote a review, a critique about it. And she communicated the importance of when you're juxtaposing something new with something old, to adapt it in a specific way, to like be sensitive about the whole thing. So I thought that was really important for me as an actor and aspiring director to see what kind of possibilities are out there when it comes to adapting something ancient into something modern, so that it can be done peacefully, respectfully, but also innovatively.
Wow. As a critic, I'm very happy to hear this. But it can actually be something of use when you are working with further productions. Nice. I would like to ask you about examples of fruitful or not fruitful criticism that you have been a part of or read, or do you have any examples?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Suresh,
Okay.
you start.
So I first started doing plays in Portugal at some point of time, and so I started getting critics coming along and talking. And one of the things I think that happened was, because of what I just said, Portugal has a trend and a history of plays that are political, or plays that are defined by the content of the political messaging, and you have to hit some marks. You have to basically tick some boxes. For example, you have to talk about the fact that there is historical language and so on and so forth. So I was trying to do a historical play set in Portugal some point of time, and so a whole bunch of critics, both online and offline, turned up and then said the play is content free. I mean, they just said the play is content free, literally, and they talked about what was not in the play. So what they wanted in the play was a completely different story. They wanted characters I was not interested in, who were not in the play. But they said, no, this is the play you should be doing, which is basically a useless conversation. I mean, the point of, but there are some critics, on the other hand, the ones I generally like are the ones who are very technical, and they kind of go for you and say, well, I know this particular scene, you wanted it to land soft. The problem with landing soft is that your particular stagecraft made it impossible because there was too much clutter on stage at this point. See, that's a beautiful, beautiful moment. They're not telling you exactly what is wrong, but they're telling you the effect. What effect, basically, they identify, first of all, your aims in that particular scene because they know enough of dramaturgy to do that. And then they say, whatever you did with your set design did not go towards fulfilling that aim. Now, they don't tell you how to solve the problem, but they actually tell you the problem. So there are a few critics who are extremely specific. And I think the general idea of a theater critic is, if you have to be good, you have to do exactly what an actor does. You tell an actor, be specific in your intentions. A critic should do exactly that. Be clearly specific in your understanding of the actor's intention and just tell them, does it work or not. There are very few critics who do this, by the way. So I think I generally enjoy receiving not necessarily sidelined sound, but just dramaturgical statements about this, saying, I know the effect you wanted, and this is what I saw. And I think the problem is here. Even if I don't agree with the problem analysis, I see it. And I think it's something that works for me, basically. But the rest of it is, oh, well, I don't know, it was too light, or too heavy, or too long, or too short. Oh, it was not the play I wanted to see at all. I wanted to see something completely different. That happens all the time. In fact, I think very established critics do that all the time. And they sometimes tell you, and sometimes they come in because the actors in your play are established and they come just for that. So they talk about how you did not use the established actor because he had 3 lines of the play. It was a Beckett play. I mean, what can I say? So it was 3 lines, and they said, well, you did not use the fact that he had a lovely voice. No, but that was deliberate. I mean, you don't have to use it. This does not help, certainly. So it's been part of the good, bad, and ugly spectrum.
Yes. So it's a matter of being actually seeing what is there and making that in text and making a kind of evaluation of what's there, not what should have been there.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Eva, you want to say something?
I haven't done my lesson. I missed this part of the questions, but maybe I can tell you about fruitful and non-fruitful experiments when it comes to writing criticism. Why do I say critic all the time? Criticism, sorry. Because in the late 90s, I started a newspaper for theater critic, or for theater. It was Riksteatern, the Swedish touring theater, that gave me the job to be editor-in-chief for this paper. That was not a paper then; it was a web. I can't talk today. they say that.
It's a website.
Website.
Yes. But then I wanted to use interactivities. I tried with different experiments to find new ways for the criticism in a dialogue with the readers. And one was that I have had professional critics writing reviews, and then I let the readers write their own review beneath the review. So they like kind of wrote about the review. And it was really a fun, very amusing idea and fun in many ways. But of course, it was more like actors from the play writing these reviews, and they were not very happy. So it was very hard to find a way to have like a neutral way to write about the reviews. But it was kind of an experiment. I stopped there because I can't explain anymore about
But can't you tell us, say something about this live review that you did?
Yes, it was fruitful. I invented the idea with Critic battles in like 2010 or something, because in the theaters people say, oh, you all critics write the same thing in their reviews, and they must be friends or something. And I wanted critics from 2 different papers they met live just in the foyer of the theater just after the performance, and then they had some kind of live criticism about the performance in a battle situation. And it was very popular, but it was hard to arrange because it was many complicated details in this.
Yeah, and you also recorded this? Some of them?
Yes, maybe later on we did. There are some left on the YouTube something, but I don't know really. It was a long time ago. But it's a different way to find new ways for the theater criticism and find a young audience. It wasn't really the answer of your question, but
Yeah, but it was fruitful examples.
yes, it
Yeah.
was fruitful examples. Yes, it was.
Yes, George.
Yes. Forgive me if I get overly excited. I'm going to talk about musical theater, which is what I'm most passionate about. So for me, theater has to do, successful theater, at least in my opinion, the kind of theater that I like, is when the director manages to tap into some kind of a subculture and realize what people need before they know they need it, and then bring that on stage to help them experience that. So I want to compare 2 different series of critiques. One is Rent, the musical by Jonathan Larson, and the other one is Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda. So Rent, essentially, which was it first came out in 1996 by Jonathan Larson, it revolutionized musical theater as we knew it. Before that, it was all very classical musical theater. Performances were very expected. And then came Rent, and Jonathan Larson, what he did, he brought in rock music into musical theater, and critics hated it. And they wrote like mixed reviews. They didn't like the new approach. However, as a result of that, but also because it resonated with something that people needed from musical theater, there was a lot of success, and it became one of the most successful musical theaters of all time. And since Rent, musical theater has become increasingly more pop, rock, bringing in different types of music, different types of theater. So this is a not fruitful example in the sense that the critics were not able to tap into people's consciousness and realize what people needed, what society was evolving towards, to be able to understand the significance of what Jonathan Larson was doing. Fun fact about him, before the premiere of the show, he passed away. So he didn't get to see the success, and he didn't get to get the awards that Rent ended up getting, and also the legacy. Now, something fruitful that happened with Hamilton, the musical, was that the creator, he brought in again, he revolutionized musical theater by bringing in hip-hop, R&B into musical theater, something again completely new from what people were expecting. In this case, the critics were able to realize that this is where the world is going towards, and they really praised the musical, and it contributed to the success. So firstly, we have Rent. Critics did not love it, were not able to see why it was important and significant, and therefore did not help with the production, although it became successful. And then with Hamilton, they really helped it gain new levels, and now it's performed like in many, in London at least, and the West, and the West End in London, Broadway. I'm sure it's going to be produced somewhere else in the world as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's also a matter of being kind of evolving yourself and knowing new kind of language or kind of aesthetics when writing review, for instance.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then
Can you go apart from what Hilda has said a while ago, I consider non-fruitful criticism the one that says nothing about the stage event, or it's negative, just for the joy of intrigue. We really see it in Greece. Or it is all positive because of client reactions. Yes. So now I have an example. I will use one example for both fruitful and not fruitful criticism. And this is because I still haven't decided where should I put it. There is this established critic in Greece, a very good critic and also a very good theater theorist, who went to see this summer Orwell by Aristophanes. Is this the proper translation? Well,
Plutus, right?
Plutus.
Plutus,
Yes.
not Plutus.
Okay, so it was saved by a very, very famous director, famous for his enormous scenography, and yes, anything. And the critic went there, and he definitely proves his opinion, and this is a very good thing to do. This is fruitful. But he judges the piece as if it was a classical staging. Is this fruitful when you have always contemporary performance in front of you? To judge it with the tools of some other genre? I don't think so. So for me, there is a conflict there in the simple text. That's why I haven't decided. So, yeah. Thank you.
I have a question, actually.
Yes.
So, when you judge this piece according to the classical genre, the foundation class genre, was he commenting on what was lost because you had modernized it? You clearly gained something, presumably. But was he commenting on what was lost?
Should I use that mic? He mentioned some things that were maybe lost, but mostly he mentioned of what happened and should be better, should be different.
Okay, I mean, I would think that there would be some usefulness extracted from that statement. I mean, the director might have made a deliberate choice to modernize it, knowing that these things were lost. But I find sometimes that when a critic tells you, a standard critic, diary-of-the-world critic, compares it to a standard genre, and tells you this is not the standard thing that I expected. If he's good, if he's a mature writer, he can tell you what is lost. And then it's possible that you have already known this and you're deliberately making a choice here. But it's also possible sometimes that you have not figured this out. Not that you will change your play, but you will know the next time that you're skipping genres or modernizing a genre, that these are the compromises you're making. I understand what you mean, but there's some information probably there.
And this critic, most of the times, proves things, and even if something is lost, he says this, and you find out that, after all, it's maybe lost. But this time, I don't know what happened to him, and He just doesn't.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you.
And I was wondering, since you, all of you are, or most of all of you are also working with it in different ways, have you actually confronted someone who's been written something about you've been working with, or you have a discussion with someone who was reviewing your work, or yes,
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, I had to do this, I just mentioned this in the workshop before. Yes, there was a moment, I think about 3-4 years ago, no, before the pandemic, 1 year before the pandemic anyway, when I'd done a play, which was a combination of two Tennessee Williams and one Harold Pinter, both stuck into one trilogy with the same actors doing it. And it was a marathon session, it was like an endurance session for the audience to, like 4.5 hours or something. And so obviously I expected people to comment on it, like, so the usual critics are the usual thing, but at some point, there were a couple of critics who were very vocal about the performance and said that the performance is very performative. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Which was, I didn't quite know whether it was a compliment or an insult. I had no idea. It felt like an insult, but I didn't quite know. So, because I invited them for coffee and then we had a conversation. And I told them, look, could you explain what you mean by being performative? And their point was, well, you put the audience through this marathon slot, this marathon session, so that by the end of the piece, by the time you're on the third play, they are incapable of actually absorbing anything. And then I said, that's true, because the third play is just silence. It's Harold Pinter. There's more silence than words, by the way. And it continues. There's a reason why those 3 plays are in sequence. The same characters play, the same actors play characters, the same characters marching through the 3 plays, interestingly. So it's not like it's disconnected. And I told them it's not disconnected. And yes, it is tiring. It is what it is. But you go from people who are young to middle-aged to old. And yeah, that is the fatigue. That's what I wanted to do. Were you fatigued? At which point they said, yes, but that was the point. I don't want to feel what the actor feels. I don't want to feel the fatigue of the character. That's what they said. At which point I said, that is a fair comment. But then maybe you should write that. Saying, oh, it is performative because I felt what the actor was feeling. I felt exactly as exhausted as the characters were, not just actors, the characters were, and I don't want to feel it. That would be fine, because if I read that, I say, oh, that was my intention, great, good job. I sometimes don't want to make you feel comfortable. Well, one of them was fine with this, and we agreed that this was okay, that this was a perfectly valid conversation. So the other one told me that I was part of this crowd that he despised. This bunch of people who take up texts and then just tear them up and be dadaist about it and be all very postmodern about it. And so for the next year, all the way till the pandemic, basically, 3 shows, he would come to the opening night and he would start the review by saying, as usual, this is a bewildering performance. And then he would write whatever he wanted to write. It was great fun. Well, luckily, the pandemic happened. And for some weird reason, he kind of left the country, went to Brazil. So, happy ending.
And in fact, did you have any comments or feedback on your reviewing?
Absolutely. I have one story I can tell you. It was maybe just a few months ago. I wrote about a performance at the Royal Dramatic Theatre by a world-famous director. And this performance had already performed all over the world, in Paris and everywhere. So me and my editor decided that it's the event as much as the play that is interesting to tell something about. So I wrote something. I'm not very proud of what I wrote. Maybe it wasn't my best review, but the day after, a world famous choreographer wrote to me, Swedish, and said, This is a world famous director, and you wrote this review like it was a gala premiere about the audience and who was there and things like that. And yes, I did, because I found it quite interesting when this kind of directors come to Sweden. Everyone from the theater world is there because it's him. But the small plays on the smaller stages is not that, no one comes to them. So of course, I wrote maybe about that, but because of this reason. So yeah, we had a long conversation. Maybe I have it in my cell phone. So I let him win, because I mean, I have my space as a writer in the paper, and he have no space. So I let him win this dialogue or discussion or whatever. Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's a matter of power hierarchy in reviewing, since the critic is actually having published a text, and the people working with the production does not have the kind of way of getting out with their opinions or how they're working.
Yes, I often let them win, because I said nice things in the review.
Yeah, and it's also, I find it very interesting with this kind of discussion, because we all care about theater, and it's different ways of approaching it. So it's actually quite interesting to have this kind of conversation between critics and people working with creating, performance. And I wanted to ask you, what forms would you like theater criticism to take going forward, and how do you propose that we work together internationally to develop criticism and formats?
Can I share?
Yes.
So I have 2 podcasts. So I love podcasts, I love video, and I've seen in my writing career as well that there has been a transition from reading text to audio and increasingly video. And I just wonder, this is a question rather than a suggestion, as to whether theater criticism can also evolve towards those directions, since people are used to, for example, we're all like doing multiple things, multitasking all the time, listening to books while being on the gym or on the treadmill, or walking or listening to podcasts. Whether theater criticism can evolve towards that direction. I'm sure there are podcasts about theater criticism, but I feel that this could be the future, or a possibility for the future, and certainly something I would be way more comfortable doing rather than just reading on my phone, listening a review and criticism on in my ears. And also another question that I wanted to bring to the forefront, I'm curious to hear what theater critics have to say about this, is how we can use AI in a constructive way in theater criticism, because whether we like it or not, ChatGPT is here to stay, and there are increasingly more AI devices and software, and people are using them, feeling guilty but still using them. So how we can take away the guilt and use it in a constructive way to support theater rather than destroy theater criticism.
Interesting. Do you want to answer?
Yeah. Also, if I'm allowed, I would like to share another anecdote about the last question. Some months ago, I wrote a critic for the performance Letter to Father by Kafka. It was staged by a very young but also very famous director, and I say that something in the performance I didn't like. So immediately he texted me on Facebook, asking what I meant. And I told him, if you want to talk about it, we can do it in person, since we are rehearsing same time, same building, same day. Let's have a coffee. He said, okay, I'll be there, and he never showed up. So probably he didn't really want to talk about it. Yeah. Coming to AI, it's interesting. I'm not that modern, probably. Sorry. I think that theater, okay, theater, you can use AI in several ways. We are not talking about this video, yes. But criticism is, and you know, is based on instincts, like also instincts, many other things. So I think that ChatGPT or any kind of a chat robot can have this instinct that a human being can express, no matter how educated it is. I think that criticism must have the perspective of a human being. I don't know if the difference I'm trying to describe is clear. It would be very distant and very, not really getting to a point, I think, because how would it have the criteria to really judge any kind of theater or performing art, or would it have the criteria?
Can I add to that?
Yes.
Of course, what you're saying is absolutely right. However, I do think as a research tool, it can be helpful in the sense of like finding references as to, let's say, for example, you saw something in a play and it's a reference about something and you don't really know a lot about the reference and you have to do your research. ChatGPT, for example, could be a great tool to research and get references that you can use in your own personal review and critique. So I was thinking about it more through that perspective. However, there may be more ways that I'm not aware of, like use it.
Research, I guess you can do. I'm not into that. I'm not into researching by ChatGPT. But probably you can nowadays.
Yes, and perhaps it's hard for you to be specific in the way that you need to be as a critic as well. To really like get to the point of how things are done on stage. Yes, positive Swedish?
Okay, your first.
I can just a few words about artificial intelligence. I don't believe it's a threat for the theater criticism, but your take was that it could help us. But my analysis is that in the first place, writing theater critic is too complicated to be written by artificial intelligence because of the reasons you said as well, that there are so many senses active when you write that artificial intelligence don't have. But for me personal, I can't see any reason why I should use AI for my articles, actually. But we work a lot about these questions on the Swedish Daily newspaper, and it's a very, it's a very important question for the journalism in general, how to as you said, use AI as a tool or see it as a threat. So.
And also like ethically, because that's the most important thing, yeah.
Absolutely, yes. But talking about different ways to work global, I believe in something very simple, and it's a digital platform for theater criticism from all over the world, where you maybe can with IE translate the articles to English. Because now I can use The Guardian, New York Times, and all papers, of course, Frankfurter Allgemein, but as in Sweden, most papers are hidden behind walls for payment, and you can't read it. And it would be nice to have everything stuck together on one platform. We have these critical stages AI thesis
Savas.
paper, yes, but they don't republish already written articles. They order articles, new ones. So, but I'm talking about all this already written globally. That would be a simple way to just need some money for it. But yeah, that's one idea.
Kind of international archive?
Yeah, yes, but not the archive sounds so boring. I believe more in like something vivid and interactive. Yes, for everyone, for the audience and for people working with theater.
Interesting.
So actually, let me try tackling that in a very much more primitive way. I was thinking about that question, and I thought the question is deceptively complex. I think because I've never actually thought about, like I said, when you asked me whether I use criticism, my first response was no, because I would have said 2 weeks ago what my process was. I said I would read reviews of other plays, other versions of play. I did not think of those reviews as written by critics. You see, it's not an internalization problem, basically. So I had to rethink this question a little bit more. So I had to ask myself, what is it that you people do actually? At least for me, or at least for the general community. So from my perspective, so you think of a cultural body, you think of the entire cultural activity of let's say a societal unit of one society as a body. And it's got various organs. These are various genres, various mediums of storytelling. Now, occasionally a new rash pops up or a new cell is born, and then somebody has to stand back, look at the whole body and say, oh, right, this feels like a rash on the hand. This feels like the hand is growing an extra digit, or the leg is growing an extra toe, or, oh, your heart muscles are getting firmer. You have to identify what is the movement of culture, of the body, and where it comes from. So, for example, you have Shakespeare, which has been done ad infinitum in every single way you can think of. But funnily enough, and I was not aware of this, it was only in 2010 or something that in the UK, they started doing musicals. They did a musical of, I think, As You Like It, a comedy. And the response was horrendous. It was horrendous. I had no idea that there would be no musical for Shakespeare for this particular thing till then. I was very impressed, actually. But there is a sense, so a musical is one particular organ in the whole cultural body. Some anatomist stands back and says, this is what is happening here to this body. This is what is happening to our body. This is how our body is aging. Now, no single artist is capable of doing that because we are all focused towards our own impulses. It requires a surgeon to stand back and say, this is what it is. Now, why does this help? Because I think, and we talked about this, I think, at some point, Yorgos, like earlier today, the trend in theater is to kind of go multimedia in a simplistic way of saying. We are a visual, we used to be an audience a long time ago, which means people who use our auditory senses. Now we are viewers. We use a lot of visual intelligence, essentially, which is why if you do Shakespeare, and if you see Shakespeare, half of it looks like it's written for morons. I bend to you, and then you kind of bend. It's really terrible, isn't it? But it is visual. But something else has happened. We are also now used to non-linear storytelling because we're used to movies where things jump, where Aristotle's notion of the unity of space and time is totally broken up, completely. So now you go and sit in a theater after you've just seen a Marvel movie where people fly over time, but also you jump cut from A to B. And then things happen for like 20 minutes in the same place. Then on the same place, a light changes. And then apparently it's a different place. It requires a different imaginative contract. There's a social contract between the audience and performers saying, I will imagine everything you tell me to, saying this is a palace because I have no CGI, but you've got to make me believe in your characters. It's a different contract when it comes to movies. So now, because we are a movie-going audience, frankly, and I think most audiences who watch theater grew up watching more movies than theater, their brain is hardwired differently. So now we bring in visuals. We bring in visuals into theater. Visuals allow you to basically jump cut, do non-linear stuff, we also have sound effects, we also have CGI, we have lasers, we have all kinds of fun stuff that happens in life, which means storytelling becomes non-linear. Now, something get lost? And I think it is a critic's job to say, it's great that you have grown an extra finger on your hand, but I'm sorry, you feel like you're losing your thumb. You will not be able to actually hold a cup in your hand. So there's a whole spate of plays, for example, that have been coming out in Lisbon lately, including plays that I've done, which involve visual elements of storytelling. So memories of characters are projected on screen, blah, 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 the usual stuff. Okay, this feels simple. It feels like a natural thing to do in life, except there are moments where there are Irish plays, like really terrible Irish plays about people in lonely Irish villages where everything is bad and everybody is sad and it ends tragically. This requires a certain pathos that kind of drips in a trickle drip fashion. You have to stay with them in the same space to feel the pathos. And what happens here is when you project memories of people, the subtext is lost completely. And I found that critics, that there were mature critics who could identify that immediately, like right there, and say, we see what you did. It's very, the production value is really brilliant. I have not seen the pathos. Somebody who can tell you that is somebody who can tell you, here's what's wrong with the body. And I think, therefore, criticism should be regarded as a science. It should be regarded as a science. You should be trained exactly the way artists are trained. If artists are trained in both visual media as well as sound, as well as in the stage, the critic should be trained in criticism of both films as well as theater, because they have to catch up with artists. It's a parallel art, effectively speaking. So just to put it mildly, we are like criminals, artists are like criminals. We commit a murder on stage. Then the critics come along and I say, I'm a detective. I'm going to find out how and why you did it and how many clues you left.
And do you think this also is something that you need to collaborate on internationally? When you were talking about this cultural body, that perhaps
Oh, yes.
also different contexts that can identify different things.
Oh, totally. Because I think most inspiration now is global. You just Google it up. And then you find that there's something that has happened in like a continent away. And you say, I like that story. Or I like the way they did that somewhere in China. And then you basically do it. Artists do this, right? Artists are inspired globally. So I think critics should basically be able to speak the language of art. You can't detect a crime unless you're as smart as a criminal, technically. And I think that's what should happen. Certainly.
Interesting.
Sorry to interrupt, but time is running out, so if you want to introduce.
Yes, let's open up the room and hear if there are comments or questions, thoughts concerning what we talked about or connecting to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I can have maybe comments.
Yes.
A question. There's an interesting thing about the theater criticism because I'm thinking how it could exist now because there's a lot of possibilities to establish your opinion about the theater or cinema or whatever. Like you can just open Instagram or Facebook and just see like reviews from some people. But still, I believe that it's important to have critics. And it's very fascinating for me how they can exist in some way, like how to make this field is open for theater criticism, because I believe that it's very important to have this professionals who will watch the processes and comment in some way. And of course we can't be we can't be objective in like 100%, but we can try to give some response at least and name the processes that are happening. And yeah, it's quite interesting how we can do that because, for example, I started be an actress. Then I was disappointed. I started to educate as a critic and a theater studies person, and I wrote about like theater. And my reviews was like maybe interesting because I knew the process from inside the theater, so it gave me something. And then I return to like making theater. So I maybe a little bit like agree that critics need to be educated as an actors. Maybe they could be together all the time and then just separate, you know, and the director, I want to be actor, I want to be a critic, or outside eye, how it's like in Scandinavia, there is some like person who can actually came and see what you've done and then give your feedback on that. So I think, yeah, it's a good idea to educate together, and then because if you can't understand what the process is inside, it's a make your users very like unhelpful. You just like saying, yeah, why it's like that? It's like that because the actor is an asshole, for example, and he like don't want to do that, or he's like has a gram or something like that. So it's like this. Yeah, this is very interesting to hear your opinion about that. And of course, about international collaboration, I think it's very important to collaborate and maybe have some, you know, exchange, because I'm interested, for example, in Chinese critics, how they dealing with that, because they have a lot of like traditional theater, how they, and there's a lot of like different approach how to make critics. Because for example, French critics and German critics, that's a quite different like things. So it's, of course, it's interesting to exchange. And for example, I don't know, 9 critics watch one performance and then show like a maybe live, give a comment, and we can see these different approaches on the one performance. There's different. I know it's going to be very, you know, it's going to be like a performance up to the performance. Yeah, thank you.
So a lot of ideas. Eva wants to say something.
But I believe being a professional critic is to go to at least 100 performances every year. That might be the difference between someone who have opinions about theater on Instagram or on TikTok. But of course, having this inside perspective as well. I worked extra in the cloakroom at the Royal Dramatic Theatre when I studied literature, theater and arts. And so I went into the every night and watched every scene when I worked there. So that was a way to be an underdog in the theater world. But also I've been writing about film and arts, working in art galleries and everything. So I believe that's quite important to have this different
exposure.
Yes, and different eyes on the performance. You have the visual eyes. I hope I have it because of my background in the art world as well.
Thank you. So a lot of ideas, and yeah, critics need to have different knowledges, and we need different critics, and we need more critics, not least younger critics. And we need to find ways of rebuilding the kind of critic force in many countries, I think. So
one more question. No, sorry. Yeah.
I don't know if it's long enough.
Is it okay? You have time? Yes. Okay. So my question it ends with what you were talking about in the beginning, that you have different conditions in your countries for critiques. And I come from Norway, and I think like we experience the same thing that we do in Sweden, that in the main media it's increasing. Oh no, it's
opposite
the
way.
opposite.
Yes, it's
Well, decrease, yeah, and but I read also a report about this, and this report said that it's not increasing in general, it's just more collective in genre-specific journals.
Mm.
So it's not less, but it's more specific for the professionals. So I found that quite interesting. So who do you guys write for? The audience or the professionals?
the audience, of course.
The audience.
Yes, but I don't have my salary. I don't have my salaries from the theaters, so of course I write for the audience.
Yeah.
It's my short answer.
yeah.
I don't have my salary here, but I write for both of them. I mean, I also have something, I hope I have something to say to the artists, and I also have something to say to the audience, for the artists, for theater, for the performances. So I think we can address both of them in a simple way, because nobody must be bored of us. So yeah, I think I write for both.
Yes, I would say also, hopefully I write both of them. But in the first place, of course, it's the readers, but I would also really like the kind of theater community to take part of the critic and to use it in their way of thinking, like you obviously do be thinking in, because it's a way of developing theater as well, I think.
I forgot the readers, because the people who read the articles they might not have seen the performance. For them, it's the only way to take part of the performance. So of course, the readers are a group as well, separate from the audience.
Yes, do we have any other?
One more question.
One more question, yes. Yes,
Yes, sorry.
Referring to the how to make young people come to theater as well to the critics, directing, acting. So here comes the question, like, how can be critics useful to make these young people to come to the theater? Because of course, writing to like professionals or like for an audience who already been to the theater, it's like obvious because they know what it is. But how we can use the critics to make the new audience interested in going to the theater, because they have a lot of other opportunities like movies, computer games, I don't know, football, because like in the northern Norway, people are saying like, oh, I will go and play football, and be like, but it's the polar night, let's know how you will play football. And they say, but it's better than theater. So how to, fight with that?
I'm talking now. I'm talking. I didn't think.
Thank you for the question. I think that's something I'm very passionate about, because as a young actor, I'm always looking for ways to like bring younger people to the audience. And I think, business 101, know your audience, find where your audience is, and reach them in a way that they can understand. So it has to do with understanding who the audience you want to attract is, finding a way to communicate with them in the language that they understand, the slang word they understand, the terms they understand, and finding where they hang out. Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. There are ways to incorporate this, I feel, in theater criticism. And of course, then once you book them, you can take them to the website where they can read something or an interview or something like that, and therefore bring them into the theater. So that's how I feel we can achieve that.
Okay, very sorry, I need to interrupt because we have artists here and they really want to prepare for their show.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
much for this panel session, everyone sitting here, and thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. And I hopefully meet you in some other kind of room or place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.